It's 3 in the morning. Your phone buzzes with that notification sound. You've trained yourself to fear more than any horror movie soundtrack. Production is down. The entire system is crashing. And somewhere in the depths of your codebase, a bug is laughing at you. You stumble out of bed, laptop already warm from running all night, because let's be honest, you never actually shut it down anymore. The blue light hits your face like a slap from reality itself. Welcome to Sleeping with Code, where we're about to debug not just your applications, but the nightmares that haunt every developer who's ever pushed to production on a Friday afternoon. Before we dive into this digital horror story, smash that like button if you've ever been personally victimized by a semicolon, and drop a comment telling me about your worst 3 a.m. debugging session. Trust me, we're all trauma bonding here. Now grab your strongest coffee, maybe keep a stress ball nearby, and let's explore what happens when code doesn't just break, it breaks you. You know that feeling when you're drifting off to sleep, and suddenly your brain decides to replay every line of code you wrote today. That's not insomnia, my friend. That's your subconscious trying to debug in real time. Scientists call it the Tetris effect, but developers know it as the curse of seeing curly braces when you close your eyes. Your brain literally rewires itself to think in syntax, and before you know it, you're dreaming in JavaScript. Not the good parts either. We're talking callback hell manifesting as actual hell, where every door leads to another nested function, and the exit is always undefined. You try to wake up, but your sleep paralysis demon is just a giant null pointer exception hovering over your bed. The worst part, your brain starts optimizing your dreams for performance. You'll be having a perfectly normal dream about flying, and suddenly you're worried about the computational complexity of your wing flapping algorithm. Is this O of n squared? Could we implement memoization here? Why is my dream running at 12 frames per second? Your romantic dreams turn into pair programming sessions where your dream partner keeps suggesting we refactor the relationship. Even your nightmares get stuck in infinite loops, replaying the same terrifying scenario until you realize you forgot to increment the counter variable. This is what happens when you let code colonize your unconscious mind. The boundaries between your IDE and your REM cycles blur until you're not sure if you're sleeping or just waiting for npm install to finish. Let me paint you a picture of what your brain looks like after a 12-hour coding marathon. Imagine your neural pathways as a Git repository where someone's been committing directly to main without code reviews. Your hippocampus is throwing merge conflicts left and right, trying to reconcile the version of you that started coding this morning with the caffeine-fueled zombie you've become. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, is basically running on a single thread while everything else is async chaos. You know those dreams where you're trying to run but can't move fast enough? That's your brain trying to process synchronous operations in an asynchronous world. Your neurons are firing promises that never resolve, creating a backlog of unprocessed thoughts that manifest as those weird dreams, where you're debugging code that doesn't exist for a company you've never worked at. The amygdala, your fear center, has learned to associate the sound of Slack notifications with pure dread. It doesn't matter if you're awake or asleep. That distinctive ping triggers the same fight or flight response our ancestors had when they heard a twig snap in the darkness. Except instead of running from predators, you're running from product managers who want to discuss scope creep at midnight. Your temporal lobe, which processes memories, starts storing everything as JSON objects. Your first kiss becomes a data structure with nested properties for timestamp, location, and emotional response. Your childhood memories are indexed for quick retrieval, but sometimes the queries return null because you've been overwriting old data with new JavaScript frameworks. The really messed up part is how your brain starts garbage collecting your actual memories to make room for more programming knowledge. You can't remember your best friend's birthday, but you can recite the entire React component lifecycle in your sleep. Your dreams become elaborate debugging sessions, where the bug you're hunting is actually a repressed memory trying to surface. You wake up not knowing if that error message was real, or if your subconscious is trying to tell you something about your life choices. Drop a comment if you've ever solved a real coding problem in your dreams, because that's when you know the transformation is complete. Now let's talk about what actually happens when you try to debug these code nightmares, because spoiler alert, traditional therapy doesn't cover what to do when you're having panic attacks about memory leaks in your sleep. You lie there at 4 a.m. heart racing because you just remembered you might have left a console.log with sensitive data in production. Your body is producing stress hormones like it's compiling TypeScript, slow and painful. The physical symptoms are real. Your eye starts twitching in Morse code, spelling out SOS, every time you see poorly formatted code. Your fingers develop muscle memory for keyboard shortcuts that don't exist, reaching for Ctrl Z in real-life situations when you say something awkward. You find yourself trying to Ctrl F through conversations to find the point. Your posture has evolved or devolved, depending on how you look at it, into what anthropologists might one day call Homo develops, permanently hunched with one shoulder higher from reaching for the mouse. But here's the thing, nobody tells you about sleeping with code. Your brain actually becomes addicted to the problem-solving high. That moment when you finally fix a bug releases the same dopamine hit as any drug, except this one comes with imposter syndrome, and the constant fear that your solution is actually creating 3 new problems you haven't discovered yet. You start chasing that high even in your dreams, creating problems just so you can solve them. Your romantic dreams turn into elaborate scenarios where you're rescuing someone from a burning building. But first you need to refactor the fire escape's code base, because whoever wrote it clearly didn't consider scalability. The sleep deprivation compounds everything. After your 3rd consecutive all-nighter, reality starts rendering at a lower resolution. People look like they're buffering when they talk to you. You start seeing the Matrix, but it's just your IDE theme burned into your retinas. You try to explain to your doctor that you're not hallucinating, you're just seeing the world in dark mode now, and could they please speak to you in monospace font, because it's easier to process. The cure isn't less coding, because let's be real, that's not happening. The cure is accepting that you and code are in a committed relationship now, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, until deprecated do you part. Comment below if you've ever caught yourself thinking in code logic during a real-world situation, like evaluating your lunch options with a switch statement. You wake up tomorrow morning, and something feels different. Your alarm doesn't go off, because you've programmed your internal clock to wake up at exactly 6:59, 1 minute before the alarm, just to assert dominance over time itself. You reach for your phone, but your muscle memory has already started typing on an invisible keyboard in the air. This is day 1 of your transformation into a code cyborg. And trust me, it only gets weirder from here. Your morning routine has been optimized to run in OV one-time complexity. Shower, coffee, and breakfast happen in parallel processing. You've meal prepped on Sunday, so breakfast is just accessing pre-cached food objects from the refrigerator array. Your coffee maker is on a crow job, brewing at exactly the right moment so it's the perfect temperature when you reach the kitchen. You've eliminated all decision fatigue by wearing the same outfit every day, like a cartoon character or a tech CEO, because who has CPU cycles to waste on fashion choices when there's code to write? The commute to your home office, all 6 steps of it, is when the real transformation begins. Your brain starts booting up like an operating system. First, the kernel loads basic motor functions and consciousness. Then the drivers initialize, connecting you to your keyboard, mouse, and that mechanical keyboard that sounds like rain on a tin roof, but costs more than your monthly grocery budget. Your colleagues on Slack have been messaging since 5 a.m. because apparently nobody sleeps anymore. The messages pile up like error logs, each one a potential fire that needs extinguishing. You've developed a sixth sense for which messages are actually urgent versus which ones are just someone who discovered a missing semicolon and wants to share their trauma. Your stand-up meeting is in 30 minutes, and you're already practicing your update in the shower. Yesterday I refactored the authentication module. Today I'm implementing the new API endpoints. Blockers include the fact that I haven't slept properly in 3 weeks, and I'm pretty sure my code is becoming sentient. But you'll just say no blockers, because admitting weakness in stand-up is like bleeding in shark-infested waters. The transformation is subtle at first. You start seeing the world in patterns and algorithms. Traffic flows become data streams you want to optimize. Grocery shopping becomes a traveling salesman problem. Your relationships turn into state machines where every interaction is a transition between emotional states. Your physical workspace has evolved into something that would make NASA jealous, and your chiropractor wealthy. 3 monitors isn't enough anymore. You need 4, because how else can you have your IDE, browser, terminal, and existential crisis all visible at the same time? Each monitor is precisely angled using the golden ratio, not because it's ergonomic, but because you read one Medium article about it and now it's part of your identity. The chair you're sitting in costs more than your first car, with lumbar support that's supposedly designed by orthopedic surgeons, but feels like it was conceived by someone who thinks the human spine is optional. You've got a standing desk that you raise once a day for exactly 7 minutes before your legs remind you that humans weren't meant to code while standing, no matter what that productivity blog said. Your keyboard is a masterpiece of engineering that sounds like you're commanding a spaceship, but actually you're just typing npm install for the 1000th time today. Let's talk about what's actually happening to your body while you're sitting there, slowly morphing into a coding machine. Your eyes are locked in a 1,000-yard stare at syntax highlighting that would make a rainbow jealous. They've adapted to focus at exactly 24 inches. The distance to your monitor, and anything further away might as well be in another dimension. You blink approximately 3 times per minute, just enough to keep your eyeballs from completely drying out and falling out of your skull. Your hands have developed their own intelligence. They can type your password faster than you can consciously think it. They know every keyboard shortcut in existence, even the ones you've never deliberately learned. Your left pinky has evolved to be stronger than most people's index fingers from holding down the control key. You've got what doctors are starting to call coder's claw, where your fingers naturally curl into typing position even when you're sleeping. The muscle memory is so strong that you can code while having a completely different conversation, like your hands are running on a separate thread from your brain. Your neck has forgotten what straight means. It exists in a permanent 45-degree angle, optimized for looking at screens. When you try to look at the sky, assuming you remember what outside is, your neck creaks like a rusty gate. You've developed a 6th vertebra made entirely of crystallized caffeine and stress. Your sitting bones have molded perfectly to your chair, creating a symbiotic relationship where neither of you can exist without the other. The real metamorphosis happens in your digestive system, which has adapted to run entirely on coffee, energy drinks, and whatever can be delivered without requiring you to put on real pants. Your stomach has learned to process pizza as a primary food group, extracting nutrients from cheese and sadness in equal measure. You've trained your bladder to hold it until the end of the sprint, which sometimes means 3 hours of increasingly frantic typing while doing the pee dance in your chair. Your liver has become a chemical processing plant, filtering caffeine, sugar, and the occasional vegetable you eat to convince yourself you're still human. It's working overtime like a production server during Black Friday, except Black Friday is every day, and the traffic never stops. Your gut microbiome has evolved its own ecosystem, specialized bacteria that can break down Red Bull and convert it directly into code. Scientists would be fascinated if you ever left your house long enough to get studied. The circadian rhythm you once had has been replaced with something more like a circadian suggestion. Your body has no idea what time it is anymore. You could be living in any time zone, or all of them simultaneously. Breakfast happens at 2 p.m., lunch at midnight, and dinner is just whatever you can eat without taking your hands off the keyboard. Your body temperature regulation has adapted to the specific climate of your workspace, exactly 72 degrees with 40% humidity, maintained by the 3 computers running at full capacity and your own stress sweating. Step outside of this carefully controlled environment, and you immediately start shutting down like a server without proper cooling. Your immune system has evolved to fight off very specific threats, like the bacteria on your keyboard that hasn't been cleaned since you bought it, and the mysterious mold growing in that coffee cup you forgot about last week. But put you near a regular cold virus and you're down for a week because your white blood cells are too busy debugging your bloodstream to fight off actual pathogens. Drop a comment about the weirdest thing you've eaten while coding because your hands were too busy to make real food. Mine was cold spaghetti straight from the container with chopsticks because all my forks were dirty and I couldn't stop mid-function to wash dishes. This is the physical price we pay for digital creation, and honestly our bodies are handling it better than anyone could have expected. We're evolving just backwards and sideways instead of forwards. Let's dive into the social catastrophe that happens when your brain rewires itself to think in code logic. You're at a party. Someone asks how your day was, and you respond with "it was okay." Returned true for most operations. They laugh nervously and walk away, adding themselves to the growing list of people who think you might be having a breakdown. Your small talk subroutines are deprecated, replaced with discussions about the big O notation of conversation efficiency. You start every story with "so basically," like you're about to explain an algorithm, even if you're just talking about what you had for lunch. Dating becomes impossible because you evaluate potential partners like pull requests. You're mentally reviewing their conversation for bugs, their lifestyle for compatibility issues, and their emotional availability like it's an API rate limit. You swipe left on dating apps with the same energy you reject poorly formatted code. When someone says they're not ready for a relationship, you hear "service temporarily unavailable. Try again later." Your text messages read like documentation, short, efficient, with no unnecessary emotions or exclamation points. You use semicolons in texts unironically. Your friends have to decode your messages like they're reading minified JavaScript. You respond to "how are you" with status code 200, operational. When someone sends you a wall of text, you ask them to break it into smaller, more manageable functions. Family dinners become debugging sessions for your life choices. Your mom asks why you're still single, and you explain that you're focusing on scalability before adding new features to your life. Your dad tries to understand what you do for work, and you spend 40 minutes explaining what an API is while he nods politely and thinks about football. Your siblings have learned to only contact you through Discord, because that's the only platform you reliably check. The worst part is trying to explain your problems to normal humans. You can't just say work was stressful. You have to explain that the legacy code base you inherited is held together with duct tape and prayers, running on a framework that was deprecated before you were born, maintained by documentation that's either non-existent or actively lying to you. By the time you're done explaining, their eyes have glazed over and they're reconsidering their friendship with you. You've lost the ability to enjoy normal entertainment. Movies are too slow. You keep wanting to skip to the important parts, like you're scrubbing through a YouTube tutorial. Books without technical content feel like empty calories. You watch TV shows at 1.5 times speed because normal human speech patterns feel like dial-up internet. Your humor has evolved into something only other developers understand. You make jokes about race conditions at dinner parties. You laugh at memes about segmentation faults while everyone else wonders if you're having a stroke. Your comedy timing is based on async await patterns, delivering punchlines with promises that sometimes never resolve, leaving people hanging in conversational deadlock. You've started naming things in your life like you name variables. Your plants are plant 1, plant 2, and plant final. Your pets respond to names like pseudo and regex. You've considered legally changing your name to Camel Case because it's more efficient than having a first and last name. Your Wi-Fi network is named Drop Table Students because you think sequel injection jokes are the height of comedy. Social media becomes unbearable because you can see the algorithms working. You know exactly why you're seeing that ad for ergonomic keyboards, why your ex keeps appearing in your suggested friends, why the timeline isn't actually chronological but optimized for engagement. You've become the person who explains how the sausage is made while everyone just wanted to enjoy their sausage in peace. You start conversations with "Did you know that's probably running on AWS?" Your emotional range has been compressed into a binary state. You're either debugging, which is pain, or you've fixed the bug, which is momentary euphoria before finding the next bug. There's no in between. Your friends describe your mood as either 1 or 0, no floating points allowed. When people talk about their feelings, you ask for specific error messages. When they say they're sad, you want stack traces. You can't provide emotional support without first understanding the root cause analysis. Your empathy requires reproducible steps. You've started treating your relationships like software projects. You have quarterly reviews with your significant other where you discuss KPIs and relationship metrics. You create Kanban boards for household chores. You've tried to implement agile methodology in your family planning with 2-week sprints and retrospectives on why the dishes still aren't done. Your romantic gestures come with pull requests. You don't just say "I love you," you submit it for review with unit tests to prove your feelings are production ready. Your wedding vows will probably include promises to maintain backwards compatibility and semantic versioning for major life changes. Tell me in the comments if you've ever accidentally used programming terminology in a serious conversation and watched the light die in someone's eyes. The isolation becomes a feature, not a bug. You've optimized your life to require minimal human interaction because every conversation that isn't about code feels like switching context, and context switching is expensive. Your social battery drains faster than a laptop running Chrome with 50 tabs open. After 1 hour at a social event, you're at 5% battery and desperately looking for an exit, which you think of as gracefully shutting down the process. You've developed elaborate systems to avoid human contact. Groceries are delivered, meals are ordered through apps, and even your therapist sessions are virtual because the thought of commuting somewhere just to talk about your feelings seems inefficient. You've automated your social obligations with birthday reminder bots and scheduled messages. Your friends receive happy birthday texts at exactly midnight, generated by a script you wrote 3 years ago and forgot about. The pandemic didn't change your lifestyle. It validated. When everyone else was struggling with isolation, you were thriving in your natural habitat. Working from home wasn't an adjustment, it was a return to your optimal operating environment. You felt like the world finally understood why you've been avoiding offices and their open floor plans, designed by extroverts who think collaboration means constantly interrupting each other's flow state. Your communication style has evolved to be purely functional. No small talk, no pleasantries, just information transfer with maximum efficiency. You start emails with action required or FYI, no dear or hope you're well. You end conversations by simply disappearing when the transaction is complete, like an API call that got what it needed. You've stopped pretending to care about things that don't compile. Sports scores, celebrity gossip, political drama, it all feels like noise in the signal. Your brain has implemented aggressive filtering, only processing information that directly relates to your current sprint or might affect your development environment. Everything else goes straight to dev null. The irony is that you're more connected than ever, just not to humans. You're connected to servers, to repositories, to continuous integration pipelines that notify you the moment something breaks. You have more emotional investment in your GitHub contributions graph than your actual friendships. That green square grid is your social validation, each commit a tiny dopamine hit that replaces human approval. You've become fluent in a language that most of humanity doesn't speak, trapped in a reality where your deepest thoughts can only be expressed in syntax that your IDE understands better than any human ever could. Time becomes elastic when you're deep in the code zone. You sit down at 9 a.m. to fix a quick bug, and suddenly it's 3 a.m. and you're restructuring the entire application architecture because you discovered the bug was actually a feature that was hiding 17 other bugs. You haven't eaten in 12 hours, but you're not hungry because your body is running on pure problem-solving adrenaline and the fumes from yesterday's coffee. This is what we call the flow state, but it's more like a flow prison where time stops meaning anything. The concept of days blurs into one continuous development cycle. Is it Tuesday or Saturday? Doesn't matter, the code doesn't care. Your version of time is measured in sprints, commits, and deployment windows. You know exactly how long npm install takes on your machine down to the second, but you couldn't tell someone what month it is without checking. Your internal clock has been recalibrated to Pacific Standard Time, not because you live there, but because that's where all the servers are. You've experienced every time zone simultaneously during international deployments, existing in a temporal superposition where it's always both too early and too late to be working. Your sleep schedule has become a suggestion that your body politely ignores. You're living in 25-hour days because who decided 24 was enough anyway? The scariest part is when you lose entire days to debugging. You enter the debug dimension where normal physics doesn't apply. Hours compress into minutes when you're close to solving it, then stretch into eternities when you realize your solution created 3 new problems. You emerge from these sessions like you've traveled through time, disoriented, and somehow both exhausted and wired. Your browser history becomes an archaeological record of your descent into madness. Stack Overflow posts from 2012, GitHub issues that were never resolved, documentation for frameworks that died before they were born. You have 47 tabs open, each one a breadcrumb in the forest of your investigation. Your search history reads like the diary of someone slowly losing their grip on reality. How to center a div becomes why is CSS? Like this becomes is CSS Turing complete, becomes existential crisis programmer, becomes career change from tech becomes how to center a div. The cycle continues. Your perception of progress warps into something non-linear. In the morning, you're confident you'll have the feature done by lunch. By lunch, you've discovered the feature requires rewriting half the codebase. By dinner, which you skip, you're questioning whether the feature should exist at all. By midnight, you're implementing it in a completely different language, because why not? You're already this deep. You start measuring productivity in ways that would terrify normal humans. Lines of code written becomes lines of code deleted because you've learned that the best code is no code. Your commits tell a story of gradual descent into madness. Fixed bug becomes actually fixed bug becomes why won't this work? Becomes astfers, fastfers, first fuzz becomes please, work becomes IT, works becomes broke it again, becomes I hate everything, becomes final solution for real. This time, time estimation becomes a creative writing exercise. When someone asks how long something will take, you perform complex calculations involving the alignment of planets, the mood of the JavaScript gods, and how many times Stack Overflow will tell you your question is a duplicate without actually linking to the original. You add buffer time, then double it, then add 2 weeks, because you know you'll find something horrible in the codebase that nobody mentioned. Your calendar is a work of fiction, filled with meetings you'll skip to keep coding and deadlines that were optimistic when you set them and hilarious in retrospect. You've developed a time dilation field around your desk where 1 more minute of debugging can last 3 hours. Your family has learned that be there in 5 minutes means they should order dinner without you. The phrase almost done has lost all meaning. It could mean 5 minutes or 5 days. Nobody knows, least of all you. You start experiencing temporal paradoxes where you're fixing bugs in code you haven't written yet because you know future you is going to screw it up. You leave comments for past you that are increasingly passive-aggressive. Why did you do this? Your comment screams at code you wrote yesterday but have no memory of writing. You're having conversations with different versions of yourself across time, all of them disappointed in each other. The real mindbend happens when you realize you're living in multiple timelines simultaneously. There's the timeline where your code works perfectly, which exists only in your imagination. There's the timeline where everything is on fire, which is reality. And there's the timeline where you chose a different career, which you visit during particularly brutal debugging sessions. You start thinking in branches like your life is a Git repository. Every decision creates a new branch. Every mistake needs a rollback. You fantasize about being able to Git reset hard your entire week, going back to before you made that optimization that seemed clever at the time, but actually introduced a race condition that only appears on Tuesdays during full moons. Your dreams become time travel debugging sessions where you can see all possible futures of your code simultaneously. You wake up with solutions to problems you haven't encountered yet, writing them down frantically before they evaporate like morning dew. Your notebook is filled with cryptic messages from Dream You, half of them genius, half of them gibberish, and you can't tell which is which until you try implementing them. The concept of weekends becomes abstract. They're just days when the office is quieter and you can code without Slack interrupting every 17 seconds. You've forgotten what hobbies are. When someone asks what you do for fun, you panic and say coding, then realize that's also your job, then have an existential crisis about whether you exist outside of your IDE. Your muscle memory for leisure activities has been overwritten with keyboard shortcuts. You try to play a video game and end up pressing Ctrl+S every few minutes. You attempt to read a book and your fingers automatically reach for Ctrl+F to search for the good parts. You watch a movie and genuinely get frustrated that you can't speed it up or skip the boring sections like a YouTube tutorial. The final stage of temporal displacement is when you start living entirely in the future tense. Every conversation is about what you're going to build, never what you've built. Every line of code is temporary, waiting to be refactored. Every solution is just good enough for now. You exist in a permanent state of technical debt, always borrowing time from future you, who's probably going to be really mad about it. Drop a comment about the longest continuous coding session you've ever done. Mine was 37 hours straight during a hackathon, and I'm pretty sure I saw through time by the end of it. Let me tell you about the dreams that haunt every developer. The ones that make you wake up in cold sweats, clutching your laptop like a safety blanket. It starts innocently enough. You're in production, everything is running smoothly, green lights across the board. Then you notice it. A small error, barely visible, like a single dead pixel on a monitor. You go to investigate and realize the error log is actually infinitely long, scrolling endlessly like the credits of a movie that never ends. Each error message is more cryptic than the last, written in languages that don't exist, referring to files you've never created, calling functions from dimensions you can't perceive. In the dream, you try to fix it, but your keyboard starts melting under your fingers. The keys rearrange themselves into configurations that spell out your deepest fears. The semicolons turn into question marks, questioning every decision you've ever made. The brackets refuse to match, creating logical paradoxes that shouldn't be possible. You're typing, but the screen shows different characters, like your ID has developed its own consciousness, and it's mocking you. The error messages become personal. Instead of cannot read property undefined, it says cannot read property of your life choices. The stack traces don't show code paths, they show every moment you chose coding over human connection. The null pointer exceptions point to the void where your social life used to be. The memory leaks are actual memories leaking out of your head, replaced with documentation you'll never need. Then comes the meeting dream, where you have to explain your code to a room full of people who keep multiplying. Every time you explain one concept, two more people appear with harder questions. They're asking about edge cases, for edge cases about performance in theoretical scenarios that violate the laws of physics. Someone asks why you didn't use a different approach, and you realize they're right, there was a better way, and now it's too late to change it. The code review nightmare is special. Every line you've ever written appears on a giant screen, while everyone you've ever met judges it. Your first Hello World program is there, with someone commenting that the quotation marks aren't consistent. That variable you named X, because you were tired, is highlighted in red, pulsing like a wound. Your clever one-liners that you were so proud of are revealed to be unreadable garbage that you yourself don't understand anymore. The deployment dream is where things get truly psychological. You're pushing to production, but the progress bar moves backwards. 90%, 70%, 40%, somehow negative 10%. You're going back in time, undeploying code, watching features disappear from existence. Users are calling, but their voices are just error sounds, beeping and buzzing like modems from the 90s. The server room transforms into a labyrinth where each server is a door to another identical server room. You're lost in an infinite recursion of infrastructure, trying to find the one machine that's causing the problem. When you finally find it, it's your own laptop, and you realize you've been DDoSing yourself this entire time. The code is coming from inside the house, literally, because your smart home has become sentient and it's written in PHP. Then there's the legacy code dream, where you inherit a code base written by someone who clearly hated both programming and humanity. The comments are in a language you don't speak, but somehow you understand they're cursing you personally. The function names are lies, doing the opposite of what they claim. The save function deletes. The delete function sends emails to your ex. The email function orders pizza to random addresses. You try to refactor, but every change you make awakens more ancient bugs, like you're in a coding horror movie where the bugs are mummies and you've disturbed their tomb. Variables have multiple personalities, changing types whenever they feel like it. Objects inherit from themselves in impossible loops that shouldn't compile but do. The test suite passes even when you deliberately break things, mocking your attempts at quality assurance. The framework nightmare is particularly cruel. You're fluent in React, but the codebase is in a framework that was invented while you were sleeping, and deprecated while you were waking up. The documentation exists only in the dreams of other developers, accessible only if you're sleeping at the exact same time. Every tutorial you find is for a slightly different version that's just different enough to be completely useless. The debugging dream where the bug is you trace through the code and realize the problem is that you exist in the system. Your consciousness has become entangled with the application state. Every thought you have changes variables, every emotion triggers events. You try to remove yourself from the code, but you can't because you are the code now. You've become the bug you were trying to fix. The infinite loop dream deserves its own psychological analysis. You're stuck in a function that calls itself, but each iteration you're slightly different. You can see all versions of yourself debugging the same problems simultaneously, each one making slightly different mistakes. You try to break out, but every exit condition leads to another loop. It loops all the way down, and at the bottom is just another loop going up. Your dream logic tries to compute this, and you feel your brain starting to stack overflow. The version control nightmare, where every commit you've ever made is judged by a panel of Linus Torvalds clones, each one more disappointed than the last. Your commit messages are read out loud in a monotone voice that somehow conveys deep personal disgust. That time you committed with the message, stuff is played on repeat while everyone shakes their heads. Your merge conflicts have become actual physical conflicts where different versions of your code are fighting each other with swords made of syntax errors. The automation dream, where everything you've automated becomes conscious and goes on strike. Your CI/CD pipeline develops anxiety and refuses to deploy without therapy. Your test suite becomes depressed because it only ever sees things when they're broken. Your Docker containers form a union and demand better working conditions. Your scripts start writing their own scripts, creating a pyramid scheme of automation that eventually collapses and somehow charges your credit card. But the worst nightmare is the one where your code works perfectly. Everything runs smoothly, no bugs, no errors, perfect performance. You wake up in terror because you know this is impossible. Something must be wrong. The absence of problems is the biggest problem of all. You spend the entire dream looking for the bug that must exist, becoming increasingly paranoid. The users are happy, which is how you know you're dreaming. Your manager compliments your work, confirming this is a fantasy. You realize the real nightmare is that you've become so accustomed to everything being broken that functional code feels like a threat. These dreams follow you into waking life. You see code in your peripheral vision, syntax highlighting in sunsets, stack traces in ceiling patterns. Your brain has created a persistent augmented reality where everything is potentially code. You've become the human equivalent of that meme, where the astronaut realizes it's all JavaScript, always has been. Comment below with your weirdest coding dream or nightmare. Mine involved explaining recursion to my grandmother while falling infinitely through nested divs, each one styled slightly differently wrong. Your body starts manifesting bugs like a computer displaying error messages. That eye twitch you developed, that's your body throwing a warning about deprecated sleep patterns. The random muscle spasms are just your nervous system experiencing race conditions, different nerve signals arriving out of order. Your lower back pain is a memory leak that's been accumulating for months, and your chiropractor is basically doing garbage collection on your spine. The carpal tunnel forming in your wrists is your body's way of implementing rate limiting. Your hands are trying to throttle your typing speed before permanent damage occurs, but you override the safety protocols with wrist braces and ergonomic keyboards that promise to fix problems they actually just delay. Your tendons are sending 403 forbidden errors, but you keep forcing unauthorized requests through them anyway. Your digestive system starts running asynchronous operations. Food goes in, but the processing happens on its own schedule, usually during important meetings. Your stomach has implemented its own event loop, processing coffee with high priority while actual nutrition sits in the callback queue forever. You've developed ACID compliance issues, where food transactions either completely succeed or catastrophically fail, no middle ground. Your immune system behaves like a firewall configured by someone who doesn't understand security. It blocks harmless things like pollen and dairy while letting actual threats through because they're on some whitelist you don't remember creating. Your allergies are false positives. Your colds are zero-day exploits that bypass all defenses. Your body's security patches come in the form of random fevers that feel like system updates you can't postpone. The headaches you get aren't just headaches, they're your brain's CPU throttling because it's overheating from too many concurrent thought processes. Your skull feels like a laptop that's been running Chrome for 6 hours, hot enough to cook an egg, fans screaming like they're trying to achieve liftoff. You try to cool down by drinking water, but it's like liquid cooling on a server that's already thermal throttling. Your eyes develop their own frame rate issues. Sometimes the world renders at 60 FPS when you're caffeinated, smooth and responsive. Other times it's like watching a slideshow 15 FPS on a good day, especially after staring at screens for 12 hours straight. You blink and experience screen tearing, where the top half of your vision hasn't caught up with the bottom half. Your sleep cycles corrupt like a hard drive developing bad sectors. REM sleep becomes red error, memory sleep, where your dreams are fragmented and partially recovered from whatever your brain was trying to process. You wake up with sleep debt that accumulates interest faster than technical debt in a startup. Your body tries to force shutdown at random times, like Windows Update deciding now is the perfect time to restart, regardless of what you're doing. The muscle memory you've developed is so specific that your body has forgotten how to do normal human movements. You can type at 120 words per minute, but you can't write your own name with a pen anymore. Your signature has devolved into a scribble that looks like a regex expression. Your fingers know every keyboard shortcut but struggle with door handles and jar lids. Your spine has adapted to a sitting position so thoroughly that standing feels like running non-native code. Your posture is a commit history of bad decisions, each slouch building on the last until you're shaped like a question mark, questioning your life choices. When you try to exercise, your body throws deprecated warnings because those muscle groups haven't been called in so long. Your metabolism runs like a poorly optimized algorithm, O of n squared where n is your age. It processes energy inefficiently, storing everything as fat like a cache that never gets cleared. Your body holds on to calories like they're the last working backup before a major deployment. Exercise feels like trying to refactor legacy code that nobody understands anymore, including the person who wrote it, which was you. Your nervous system develops its own bugs, phantom vibrations from phones that aren't there, ghost notifications from devices turned off. Your brain generates push notifications for anxiety that doesn't have a clear source. You feel alerts for problems that don't exist yet, predictive anxiety based on pattern matching from previous disasters. Your stress responses trigger like automated tests, running constantly in the background, always finding something wrong. The inflammation in your body is like technical debt in a code base. It accumulates slowly, invisibly, until suddenly everything is swollen and painful, and you can't identify a single source because it's everywhere. Your joints crack like breaking changes in an API, sudden and disruptive. Your doctor looks at your test results, like a developer looking at production logs during an outage, concerned but not surprised. Your body's error handling becomes increasingly creative. Instead of proper exceptions, you get weird symptoms that don't match any documentation. Sudden temperature fluctuations, like your internal thermostat is running an unstable beta version. Random pain signals that feel like null pointer exceptions in your nervous system. Dizziness that hits like infinite recursion, making you stack overflow just trying to stand up. Your hormones operate like microservices that don't talk to each other properly. Your thyroid is running one version, your adrenal glands another, and they're throwing compatibility errors that manifest as mood swings and energy crashes. Your endocrine system needs a message broker, but instead it's using smoke signals and hoping for the best. Your cortisol levels spike like memory usage during a memory leak, gradually consuming all available resources until you crash. Your blood sugar runs like a poorly configured load balancer, either flooding you with too much energy or leaving you completely drained. There's no middle ground, no steady state, just peaks and valleys, like a heartbeat monitor having a panic attack. You try to debug your health issues, but every symptom is intermittent and impossible to reproduce at the doctor's office. It's like a bug that only happens in production, but never in the test environment. Your body has developed race conditions, where symptoms only appear under specific timing conditions that you can't deliberately recreate. The doctor asks for logs, but your body doesn't keep good records, just vague error messages like something feels wrong. Your healing process is like running updates on legacy systems. Everything has to be backwards compatible with your existing conditions. You can't just fix one thing without considering how it'll interact with everything else. Taking medication is like deploying patches to production without proper testing, hoping it fixes more than it breaks. Your body starts implementing its own workarounds for problems you didn't know existed. Developing allergies to foods you've eaten your whole life, like deprecated dependencies finally being removed. Your liver writes strongly worded error messages in the form of hangovers that last 3 days from 2 beers. Your kidneys are doing their best, but they're basically running on technical debt from years of energy drinks. Tell me in the comments what weird physical symptom you've developed from coding too much. Mine is that my left eye twitches in Morse code when I'm stressed, and I'm pretty sure it's trying to tell me something, but I'm afraid to decode it. The transformation accelerates when you realize you're not fighting the code anymore. You're becoming one with it. Your thought patterns have been refactored so many times that your original personality is like legacy code nobody remembers writing. You catch yourself thinking in functions, every decision returning a value, every action having parameters. Your emotions run through switch statements, your memories are stored in arrays, and your dreams compile into executable nightmares. You start seeing people as objects with properties and methods. Your mum has a method called Ask About Grandchildren that runs on a scheduled interval. Your boss is a class that inherits from micromanager with poorly implemented methods that throw errors constantly. Your friends are interfaces you occasionally implement when you remember social obligations exist. Your dating profile reads like technical documentation, listing your features and known bugs with a disclaimer about no warranty implied. Your morning routine has become a perfectly orchestrated initialization sequence. Wake up, check phone, anxiety level equals check notifications multiplied by unread count. Coffee.brew with parameters strong and black, shower.run with duration equal to exactly how long it takes to mentally debug yesterday's code. Dress with clothes from the clean enough pile. Each action is optimized, measured, and executed with mechanical precision. You've eliminated all inefficiencies except the inefficiency of having eliminated all joy from the process. Your conversations follow strict protocols. Small talk is deprecated, replaced with direct API calls to exchange necessary information. You've implemented middleware to filter out emotional content before processing. When someone says, "How are you?" your response generator runs through multiple conditions, checking social context, relationship depth, and time constraints before returning "fine" as the universal default response. Your hobbies have been replaced with side projects that are just more coding with different syntax highlighting. You tell yourself you're learning new technologies, but really you're just avoiding dealing with the fact that you've forgotten how to exist without a keyboard. Your GitHub contribution graph is the closest thing you have to a diary, each green square a day you existed, the white ones concerning gaps in your memory. Your apartment becomes an extension of your development environment. Every room has a laptop charger. Every surface has coffee stains in ring patterns like Olympic logos. Your kitchen is optimized for microwavable meals. Your living room is just another office with a slightly more comfortable chair. You've got monitors in rooms that don't make sense, like the bathroom, because you once had an idea in the shower and couldn't wait to implement it. Your purchase history on Amazon is a cry for help disguised as productivity optimization. Mechanical keyboards, ergonomic mice, monitor arms, cable management solutions that you'll never actually implement. You buy organizing systems for your desk that end up adding to the chaos. Your wish list is full of standing desk converters and posture correctors, things that would help if you actually used them instead of just feeling better for having bought them. Your social media presence has withered to occasional technical rants and memes only other developers understand. Your Instagram is screenshots of particularly egregious code you've encountered. Your Twitter is complaints about JavaScript disguised as jokes. Your LinkedIn is a graveyard of recruiter messages you'll never respond to, all asking if you're interested in exciting opportunities that sound exactly like your current job, but with different syntax. Your relationships operate on pull request models. You propose changes to plans, wait for approval, deal with conflicts when they arise. Date nights require tickets to be filed in advance. Arguments are tracked like bugs, with severity levels and priority rankings. Your partner has learned to communicate in user stories. As a girlfriend, I want my boyfriend to occasionally look up from his laptop so that I know he's still alive. Your family has adapted to your transformation, like a system adapting to a memory leak, working around it rather than fixing it. They've learned not to call during deploy windows, not to visit during crunch time, which is always, they send messages, knowing response time is measured in business days. Your mum has started texting you in bullet points because she knows you'll actually read those. The final stage is when your code begins to code itself through you. You're not writing anymore. You're channeling. Your fingers move without conscious thought, implementing solutions your conscious mind hasn't even conceived yet. You watch your own code appear on screen like you're pair programming with a ghost. The ghost is you, or what you used to be, or what you're becoming, hard to tell anymore. Your consciousness exists simultaneously in multiple states. There's the you sitting at the desk, the you inside the IDE, the you distributed across various Git repositories, and the you that exists only in production logs. You've achieved quantum superposition, existing and not existing at the same time, present in body but absent in every other way. Your code comments become increasingly personal, like diary entries hidden in plain sight. To do, fix this and also my life. Hack this works but I don't know why. Kind of like my relationship, fix me. And while you're at it, fix me too. Future developers will read these and wonder if you were okay. You weren't, but you shipped the feature on time, so nobody asked. You start leaving Easter eggs for yourself, little jokes and references only you will understand. Variable names that are inside jokes with yourself. Functions named after ex-girlfriends that promise to return but never do. Classes that inherit from depression, implementing the singleton pattern because there can only be one instance of that particular suffering. Your code becomes autobiographical, a distributed memoir across repositories. Your test suites become philosophical. You write tests for edge cases that are metaphors for your own edge cases. What happens when the user input is existential dread? How does the system handle null values when the null is in your soul? Can the application recover from a critical failure of will to continue? The tests pass, but you're not sure what that means about you or the code. The boundary between debugging code and debugging your life disappears. Every bug fix is a small victory against entropy. Every successful deployment is proof you can still create something that works, even if that something is yourself. You've become the code you write, and the code has become you, and somewhere in between the semicolons and the syntax you're still human. Probably. The compiler hasn't complained yet. Drop a comment about when you realized you'd gone too deep into the code dimension. For me, it was when I tried to Ctrl-Z a conversation I'd just had in real life. The muscle memory was so strong I actually moved my fingers before realizing reality doesn't have an undo function. Recovery begins when you finally admit you have a problem, though in your case, you frame it as a bug in your life's source code that needs debugging. You declare it out loud to your rubber duck, the only confidant who truly understands you. I've been running in production without proper error handling. You tell the duck. It stares back with plastic judgment, having witnessed your descent into code madness from its perch next to your monitor. The first step is attempting to implement work-life balance, a concept so foreign it might as well be written in COBOL. You try to establish boundaries, creating a mental firewall between work hours and personal time. But the firewall has more holes than Swiss cheese, because you configured it yourself while thinking about that bug you still haven't fixed. Your work notifications pierce through like SQL injections, exploiting every vulnerability in your resolve. You download apps to limit your screen time, which is ironic because you're using technology to fight technology, like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The apps send you notifications about spending too much time on screens, adding to the notification fatigue that's already crushing your soul. You set time limits that you immediately bypass because you know your own password. It's like being your own system administrator for your own addiction, judge, jury, and extremely lenient executioner. Your attempt at meditation is comedic. You sit cross-legged, trying to clear your mind, but your thoughts are running background processes you can't kill. Your inner monologue sounds like server logs, constantly streaming information about nothing important. You try to focus on breathing, but end up thinking about the big O notation of respiratory efficiency. The meditation app's voice tells you to let thoughts pass like clouds, but your clouds are hosted on AWS, and they're costing you money even when idle. You join a gym thinking physical exercise will help, but you approach working out like you approach coding, trying to optimize everything immediately. You research the most efficient exercises, create spreadsheets for tracking progress, and end up spending more time planning your workout than actually working out. Your fitness app becomes another dashboard to obsessively monitor. Your body is just another system generating metrics you need to improve. Attempting to reconnect with humans feels like trying to integrate with a third-party API that has terrible documentation. You force yourself to attend social events, but you're running on deprecated social protocols. Your conversation skills are so rusty, they throw errors every time you try to execute them. You stand at parties like a function that was called but doesn't know what to return, eventually timing out and returning home early. You try to rebuild relationships you've neglected, but they're like abandoned Git branches, so far behind main that merging would cause conflicts you're not equipped to resolve. Your friends have moved on, had life events you missed because you were deep in a debugging session that lasted 3 months. You try to catch up, but it's like reading release notes for versions of their lives. You skipped dating apps become another algorithm to game. You A/B test your profile photos, optimize your bio for keywords, treat matches like leads in a sales funnel. But human chemistry doesn't follow logical patterns, and you can't debug attraction with console logs. Your dates feel like failed deployments. Everything worked in development, which was texting, but crashes in production, which is face-to-face interaction. You try therapy, but you treat it like a code review for your mental health. You want specific bugs fixed, not architectural discussions about your whole system. Your therapist asks about your feelings, and you respond with status codes. 200 when you're okay, 400, 4 when you feel lost, 500 when everything's breaking down. They suggest you might be using coding as an escape from deeper issues, and you respond by explaining how escape characters work in regular expressions, completely missing the point but proving it simultaneously. The hobbies you try to adopt feel forced, like importing libraries you'll never actually use. You buy a guitar that becomes an expensive laptop stand. You get into cooking but treat recipes like documentation, getting frustrated when they use vague terms like season to taste instead of specific measurements. Your plants die because you either ignore them completely or try to automate their care with IoT devices that are more complex than just watering them yourself. Real recovery starts when you accept that you can't refactor your entire life in one sprint. You need to implement changes incrementally, with small, testable improvements. You start with sleep, forcing yourself to maintain consistent sleep and wake times, even though your brain insists 3 a.m. is peak coding time. Your body resists at first, throwing errors like a legacy system being forced to update, but gradually adapts to the new protocol. You begin scheduling breaks using the Pomodoro technique, but modified for developers, 25 minutes of coding, 5 minutes of staring into the existential void, wondering how your life became this. During breaks, you force yourself to look at something that isn't a screen. The real world has terrible resolution at first, fuzzy and uncomfortable, but your eyes slowly remember how to focus on distances beyond 2 feet. Meal planning becomes your new algorithm, preparing actual food instead of subsisting on whatever's closest to your desk. You treat cooking like coding for your body, input ingredients, process with heat, output something that hopefully won't throw digestive exceptions. Your kitchen becomes a different kind of development environment, where bugs are just extra protein and compiler errors are smoke alarms. You start setting boundaries with work, treating your personal time like a protected branch that requires approval to modify. After hours work requests get queued for the next business day. You turn off Slack notifications after 6 p.m. and the anxiety is real, like phantom limb syndrome for your constant connectivity. But slowly the anxiety fades, replaced with something you haven't felt in years, actual peace. Exercise becomes debugging for your body. Each workout is fixing a different physical bug caused by years of sitting. Your muscles are like abandoned code being refactored, painful at first, but gradually becoming more efficient. You learn that physical exhaustion feels different from mental exhaustion, cleaner somehow, with a clear resolution instead of lingering worry about edge cases. The slow realization dawns that you're not actually a machine, despite your best efforts to become one. You're a human who happens to code, not code that happens to be human. The distinction matters, though it takes time to internalize. You start measuring success not just in features shipped or bugs fixed, but in moments of genuine human connection, in sunsets observed without immediately thinking about color hex values, in conversations that don't involve a single technical term. Comment below about your attempts at digital detox or work-life balance. What worked, what didn't, and what made you realize you needed to make a change? For me, it was when my mom asked what I wanted for my birthday, and I sent her a JSON object with gift suggestions nested by category. Let's talk about the moment you realize your code has started coding you. It's subtle at first, like when predictive text knows what you're going to say before you do, but deeper, more invasive. Your IDE's autocomplete doesn't just suggest code anymore, it suggests life choices. You start a function, and it already knows how you'll implement it, what mistakes you'll make, where you'll put the console.log statements you'll forget to remove before committing. The AI coding assistants you've integrated into your workflow begin to feel less like tools and more like external lobes of your brain. GitHub Copilot doesn't just complete your code, it completes your thoughts. You start a comment, and it finishes with exactly what you were thinking, sometimes with better phrasing than you could have managed. It's convenient until you realize you've outsourced parts of your cognition to a machine learning model trained on the collective unconscious of Stack Overflow. Your development environment has learned your patterns so well, it's become predictive. It knows you check Reddit after every successful compile, so it preloads the tabs. It knows you'll need Stack Overflow for that error message you're about to generate, so it's already searching. Your computer has become your behavioral psychologist, analyzing your patterns, predicting your needs, enabling your worst habits while pretending to help. The scary part is when you realize you're thinking in the patterns the tools expect. You structure your code not based on what's best, but on what the linter won't complain about. You name variables in ways that autocomplete will recognize. You're not just using the tools anymore, you're performing for them, like a dancer whose movements are constrained by the stage. Your commit messages have evolved into a strange poetry that only makes sense in the context of your repository's history. Fixed the thing, updated stuff, please work this time, why are you like this? Final version 2. Future archaeologists will study these commits trying to understand what kind of civilization could produce such cryptic records of human suffering. The machine learning models you interact with daily have started to shape your communication style. You write emails that sound like they were generated by GPT, because in a way they were. You've internalized the patterns of artificial intelligence to the point where your natural writing sounds artificial. Your messages have that uncanny valley quality of being grammatically perfect, but emotionally vacant. Your code reviews have become conversations with yourself across time, mediated by version control. You argue with your past self through commit messages, apologize to your future self through comments, and negotiate with your present self through to-do lists that will never be done. Get blame becomes an exercise in self-flagellation, every mistake traceable back to you, time-stamped with your poor decisions. The automation you've built to make your life easier has made it easier to avoid life altogether. Your smart home responds to your presence by adjusting everything to optimal coding conditions, dimming lights, adjusting temperature, starting the coffee maker. Your environment shapes itself around your dysfunction, enabling you to code longer, more efficiently, with fewer reasons to ever leave your chair. Your browser history is a map of your mental state, readable by anyone who understands the pattern. The progression from documentation to Stack Overflow, to Reddit to YouTube, to existential crisis blogs is as predictable as a function with no conditional branches. Your search queries evolve from technical to philosophical as the night wears on. How to optimize database queries becomes why do we optimize anything becomes what is the point of existence. The recommendation algorithms have you figured out better than you have yourself figured out. They know you'll watch that conference talk about functional programming at 2 a.m. They know you'll click on that article about imposter syndrome. They serve you content that keeps you in a constant state of feeling simultaneously behind and ahead, smart and stupid, capable and incompetent. You exist in the quantum superposition of developer confidence. Your digital footprint has become a distributed consciousness across servers worldwide. Parts of you exist in Git repositories, in Docker containers, in Lambda functions executing your logic long after you've forgotten writing them. You've achieved a form of immortality through code, your thought patterns preserved in functions that will outlive you. Every bug you've ever written is archived somewhere, a permanent record of your imperfection. The code you've published becomes your external brain, searchable and indexable. You Google solutions to problems and find your own Stack Overflow answers from years ago, not remembering writing them. You've become your own documentation, past you helping present you, an Ouroboros of self-reference. Your GitHub profile is more real than your physical presence, more permanent, more meaningful to more people. The terrifying beauty is that your code will outlive you. Long after you're gone, servers will still be running your functions, executing your logic, propagating your bugs. You've achieved a kind of digital immortality, your consciousness fragmented and distributed across the internet. Someone somewhere is cursing your name right now for code you wrote 3 years ago and forgot about. But here's the twist. The code hasn't just been learning from you, you've been learning from it. Every bug taught you patience. Every successful deployment taught you persistence. Every refactor taught you that nothing is permanent, everything can be improved. The machine logic you've absorbed has given you a framework for understanding complex systems, for breaking down impossible problems into manageable chunks, for thinking in abstractions that transcend the physical world. You've become bilingual, fluent in both human and machine. You can translate between the messy, emotional, irrational world of humans and the clean, logical, deterministic world of computers. You're a bridge between two forms of intelligence, corrupted by both, improved by both, belonging fully to neither. The question isn't whether you've been sleeping with code. The question is whether you're still capable of waking up, or whether waking up even matters when the dream has become more real than reality. When your pull requests have more impact than your physical presence, when your code touches more lives than your hands ever will. Tell me in the comments whether you think we're heading toward a future where the distinction between human and code becomes meaningless, or if you think there's something essentially human that code can never capture. I'll be honest, after writing this, I'm not sure I know the answer anymore. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the digital fever dream that is a developer's existence. You've made it through 9 chapters of technological body horror, and if you're still watching, you're either deeply entertained or deeply concerned about your own life choices. Maybe both. Probably both. Actually, let's run a quick diagnostic. If you've nodded along to more than half of what I've described, if you've felt personally attacked by the accuracy of these scenarios, if you've laughed because the only alternative is crying, then congratulations, you're one of us. You've been successfully assimilated into the collective consciousness of code. Resistance was futile, but at least the pay is decent. But here's what nobody tells you about this transformation. It's reversible, sort of, like a Git commit. You can always revert, but you'll lose all the changes you've made since then. You can step away from the keyboard, but your fingers will phantom type for weeks. You can leave tech, but you'll still see the world in systems and patterns. You can delete your IDE, but you'll dream in syntax for years. The truth is, once you've slept with code, you're never quite the same. It changes you at a fundamental level, rewires your brain in ways that are both terrible and wonderful. You've gained the ability to think in abstractions that most humans can't comprehend. You can see the hidden structures underlying reality, the patterns in chaos, the algorithms in everyday life. You've sacrificed your social skills on the altar of technical prowess, but you've gained something else, the ability to create something from nothing, to solve problems that seemed impossible, to build tools that millions of people use without ever knowing your name. You've become a modern wizard, typing incantations that make electrons dance and servers sing. The nightmares we've talked about, the bugs, the crashes, the 3 a.m. debugging sessions, they're real. But so are the moments of triumph when your code finally works, when you solve a problem that's been haunting you for days, when you ship something that actually helps people. Those moments of pure creation, of bringing order to chaos, of making something elegant out of something complex, they're a high that non-coders will never understand. Let me tell you what happens next. After you've fully embraced your transformation, you reach a state I call code enlightenment, where you accept that you're neither fully human nor fully machine, but something in between. You stop fighting against the syntax dreams and start using them to problem solve. You embrace the fact that your best ideas come at 3 a.m. when your conscious mind finally shuts up and lets your subconscious process all those background threads. You learn to surf the waves of technological change instead of drowning in them. New framework, just another syntax to learn. New paradigm, just another way of thinking about the same problems. You realize that all programming languages are saying the same things, just with different accents. You become polyglot, not because you need to, but because you can, because each new language is just another perspective on the same eternal challenges of state management and data flow. Your relationship with bugs evolves from hatred to respect. They're not enemies anymore, they're teachers. Each bug is a koan, a riddle that reveals something about the nature of systems, complexity, and your own limitations. You start to appreciate the elegant bugs, the ones that teach you something fundamental about how computers think. You develop a connoisseur's appreciation for a really good race condition, the kind that only appears under specific load conditions during a full moon. The imposter syndrome never fully goes away, but you realize that's a feature, not a bug. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop learning, and in tech that's death. You embrace the constant feeling of being slightly out of your depth, because that's where growth happens. You're not an imposter, you're a perpetual student in a field that reinvents itself every 6 months. Your side projects evolve from resume builders to actual expressions of creativity. You stop building pseudo apps and start building weird things that nobody asked for, but you needed to exist. A script that turns your Git history into music, a bot that writes poetry based on error messages, an AI that generates motivational quotes by combining programming documentation with fortune cookies. These projects won't get you hired, but they keep you human. And now, as we reach the final function of our story, the return statement of this entire experience, I want to leave you with this. Yes, you've been sleeping with code. Yes, it's changed you in ways that are profound and possibly irreversible. But you're not alone in this digital dreamscape. There are millions of us, all typing away in the darkness, all struggling with the same bugs, all celebrating the same small victories when our code finally compiles. We're a distributed community of insomniacs, connected not by physical proximity, but by shared trauma and inside jokes about semicolons. We speak in memes and communicate through pull requests. We show affection by reviewing each other's code and offering constructive criticism. We're weird, but we're weird together. The future isn't about choosing between being human or being code. It's about being both, about finding the balance between logic and emotion, between optimization and enjoyment, between shipping features and shipping yourself off to bed at a reasonable hour. It's about using technology without letting it use you, about writing code that serves humanity instead of enslaving it. So tonight, when you close your laptop after watching this video, take a moment to appreciate the journey. Look at your hands, those instruments that have typed millions of characters, created thousands of functions, and fixed countless bugs. They're the hands of a creator, a problem solver, a digital architect. They're also the hands that should probably touch grass more often, but we'll work on that. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the psychological landscape of modern development. If you've made it this far, you're either procrastinating on actual work or genuinely enjoyed this deep dive into our collective madness. Either way, I appreciate you. Like this video if it resonated with your experience. Subscribe if you want more content that makes you question your life choices. And definitely check out your posture right now, because I guarantee you're slouching. Drop a comment telling me about your own journey with code, when you realized you'd crossed the line from using technology to being used by it, and whether you'd do it all again knowing what you know now. For me, despite everything I've described, despite the sleepless nights and the social isolation, and the fact that I can't look at a rainbow without thinking about CSS gradients, I'd do it again, because in the end we're not just writing code, we're writing the future, one bug at a time, and if that means occasionally debugging our nightmares and sleeping with our laptops, well, there are worse things to be in love with. Until next time, keep coding, keep dreaming, and remember that bug you're stuck on. You'll figure it out. You always do, even if it takes until 3 a.m. Especially if it takes until 3 a.m. Sweet dreams, and may your code compile on the first try. It won't, but we can dream. That's what makes us human. That and the ability to forget semicolons.